My friend and fellow agent at Midwest Invest Realty Group comes on the show today. His name is Mason Peterson, and we get in the weeds of how he's using contract for deed as a tool, as he's calling sellers directly in our community, having conversation, building relationship, and going over options if they are looking to exit their property. And contract for deed is one of those options. Our conversation is so good, I don't even want to waste a minute going over anything else. I want to zone in on that conversation. But first, welcome to this week's Midwest Invest Report. All right, I've got our guest, Mason Peterson, on the show today. Mason is one of those guys in my world, which he is part of the Midwest Invest Real Estate Realty Group team. He's part of our real estate team. And Mason's one of those guys that's young, he's hungry, he's grinding, he stays humble, but he's doing the work. Mason, I can't tell you enough how fun it's been to work alongside you. Thanks for being on the show, dude.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to get talking today.
All right, Mason, quick for the audience. I want you to give a little backstory. We want to know a little bit about you as a person before we get into the nitty gritty on some of this real estate and contract for deed stuff. Give us the 60 to 90 seconds on your story and how you got into real estate. What was that all about?
Sure thing. So I had about the most basic entry into real estate you get, and that was I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, like a lot of other people have.
All right, raise your hand if you read Rich Dad Poor Dad and you're into real estate. Everybody in their cars is raising their hand now.
I can see a couple people out there in the parking lot. I read that book and kind of shaped or shifted my thoughts in life, and I took up an opportunity to manage a building here in Fargo. And some of the Fargo people are familiar with the building that's got Hurden Horns in it. That's how I always refer to it.
All right, so that's the 12th Avenue big brick building south of NDSU for us locals that are listening to the show, right? So you were managing like commercial and residential space or commercial and rental space, right?
Yeah, so I got in with the owner and just kind of started working for free, just doing stuff around the building. And
okay, let me stop you quick, Mason. Tell us the story. I got in with the owner because there's a lot of aspiring real estate people. Entrepreneurial people, like this isn't, don't just brush right over this. So like, how did you get in contact? How did you find this opportunity?
Yeah, so I was actually serving at Hurden Horns for a couple years. And through that, I was always reading books during my shifts, which I shouldn't have been. And they were all real estate books. And I slowly got to know the owners. It's funny, I've kind of worked for each one of them. There's a bunch of different owners at Hurden Horns. And I came across the guy that owned the whole building. And he was very good to me. He let me come on. I started kind of proving myself that, hey, I'm a young dude. He was looking for someone to start managing it for him just privately. So I just started doing small tasks around the building, and that's how I kind of got in with him, started to build up trust, and started to prove myself, even though I had no idea what I was doing. I just started teaching myself, and he helped me, and that's how I got interested in real estate. I learned the whole management side of things, like from the leasing, from the getting people pre-approved, applications, background checks, marketing the building, cleaning units. Like I was in there cleaning every unit for turnovers myself, and it was just a great start. And I did that for 2 years, and now he's a mentor of mine, phenomenal guy. And that's how I got started. He convinced me to get my real estate license. And so he helped me out with that. Got that going, and took me a while to get my license, but last year June I got it, and I've been in the real estate selling side of things for the last about a year, and that's kind of the next journey in my real estate career. But I am a big believer in the investing side of real estate, and that's kind of my specialty. Even though I haven't gotten that first property down, it's all the things that I've done have led up to be prepared to, get that first place. And yeah, it's been an exciting journey. And now I'm on the team here at Midwest Invest, and working alongside Kyle here. And I got another great mentor in the back of my pocket right now. So it's always good to, it's all about who you know, right? So, and now we're
Well,
here.
mentorship by learning from all of my mistakes, right? Well, that's still
Yeah.
good mentorship. But hey, I think there's a couple lessons. There's a lesson in everything. Number one, I loved what you said about just adding value to these people that were doing things at a different level than you, man. And it led to the next thing and the next thing. And all of a sudden you found yourself gaining experience that few of us even listening, not me, managing a building that's way bigger than anything I've ever been a part of yet. So,
Yeah.
dude,
I forgot
that's
to
cool.
mention it. Yeah. It's a 38 unit apartment building, and then it's got, 8 to 10 commercial spots below. So yeah, it was a big jump right away, but man, it paid off. So yeah.
So, and you were doing that while you're grinding serving tables. It's a small community, you guys. We're all in it. Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo, beyond. There is opportunity everywhere if you keep your eyes around looking. And I know the people, Mason and I actually met with one today. People that are looking for opportunity, seeking networking opportunity, connecting in our area are winning. And so this might be your prompt to definitely be a connector. Mason, one of the ways you're trying to find deals that you mentioned is you're actually picking up the phone. You're actually calling owners. You're actually talking to people that own properties that you might want to acquire and talk through. I mean, that's a cool thing. That's a scary thing for a lot of people. But talk to us about finding that first investment property. And I want to walk towards the topic of contract for deed, because what we're seeing is that's usually an option you're pitching as for if someone's looking to exit, right? How can kind of marry those two things together of trying to find some deals and then also talking to them about the contract for deed in a simple way.
Yeah. I mean, talk about a guy trying to find his first deal and grinding for it, because it has been a long journey. And I said I wanted to buy one 3 years ago. And I've always been stuck in that analysis paralysis stage. And taking the jump to like really go out there and find deals that aren't on the market it's been very beneficial for me so far, just because I've been able to just connect with these other investors in Fargo. And, it kind of starts with picking up the phone. And I found that to be super successful. It may have not led to a property in the last month or two of doing it, but that's not really the goal of it. The goal that I've found that I've been striving for is, hey, I'm getting on the phone with these investors and I'm trying to form a relationship with these people, these guys and gals, because, you know, down the road, who's to say these people won't remember me and, throw deals my way. Um, we're trying to find deals, or I'm trying to find deals off of these, but these are investments in themselves, these relationships with these people on the phone.
Mm.
And it's super important to get face to face with them. And if you can just, find a time to meet with someone who has done what you want to do, you are going to get so far ahead, even if you don't see the results right now. And it's a battle I've been having between myself. Hey, why don't I have a property yet? But then there's the other side that it's like, hey, this is the investment you're making. So down the road, these properties are funneling in, and you're like the main source. So you got to get creative in some instances. I had a salaried position last year, and I was looking at properties, and I kind of got cold feet. Um, and I ended up actually leaving my job to pursue real estate full time. And so I had to ask myself a question. Okay, I know how this process works. You got to get pre-approved from the bank, which I was. Now I can't really do that unless I have a partner in the deal. So you got to get creative, and that kind of brings it towards the contract for deed option, which I've done a lot of looking into. Me and Kyle have talked a lot about it. I watch a lot of videos from a group called Multifamily Strategy. There's two guys that run that, and they have a really good perspective on contract for deeds. And so if you have to get creative, you can always pitch this idea of, hey, to the seller, like, hey, are you willing to carry the contract? Usually you're looking at people who are they got their properties paid off. Makes it a lot easier. But
Yep.
those people won't do anything with you if you don't establish the relationship first, which
Yeah,
is the
that's
first step.
that's huge, dude. Dude, what you just said is like, how many times do people get calls, me included, just trying to sell me something or ask me if I'm going to sell something, if it's a real estate property, right?
Yep.
But you're taking a different approach. You're like, hey, I'm in the area. Like this is what my goals are. What are your goals with this property? Relationship. And it's led you to some conversation where people actually do express motivation and say, hey, I'm actually kind of looking to get rid of maybe not this property you called on, but these two over here. And then, I mean, you and I have talked about this. People want options from there. What options can you provide? Obviously, they could sell it on the market, but another one you talked about was contract for deed. What is contract for deed to you, Mason? Because you're a young guy, you're coming in. Contract for deed has this like scary mysticism to it. It's kind of like some old school stuff that happened 30 years ago more commonly. Like, what is it to you?
Yeah. I think, yeah, it's definitely a good thing to hear from another like kind of newbie investor, because I know there's a lot of like newer investors watching. And so I want to be upfront and say, I don't have everything figured out on this whole, creative financing strategy and all this whatnot. But I figured out as soon as I started to throw out ideas and pitches to these people. You start to learn it a little bit more. So I know the basics. And basically what you are trying to do is, hey, usually you're talking to older investors who are trying to slowly get out of the game, and they don't need the cash up front, right? Like you don't want to pitch this idea to people who are, trying to roll money into another property and build a portfolio, right? Because they
Yes.
need the cash.
And
Well,
that's an important thing there, Mason. Like if you're listening, you're going to know real quickly if it's the right option, because if someone's moving cash quickly and they need to cash out, that's not what a contract for deed is for. Continue. I'll just
right.
interjecting.
So it's it's a long term play, right? So essentially, the owner says, "Hey, I don't really need the cash up front right now. I'd rather see this money continue to come in, kind of like it was cash flowing prior." And you basically create a contract where the owner becomes the bank. Now you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
go to the bank and do all this pre-qualification and pre-approvals and all these requirements. You're just essentially striking a deal with the owner directly, and they're financing it to you. And as long as you both can work out winning terms for each side, which you can, you just have to communicate and talk it out. There's a big win in this contract for deed area, which I've come to figure out after just talking about it with investors. And you really want to win in the terms game. And for for an investor like us, you want to be able to structure the deal where it's long term fixed rate debt, and you might be able to. The beauty of it is you can make whatever terms you want as long as both sides agree. So it can
Yeah.
be really fun just drafting up options.
Okay. Well, Mason, I love examples and I don't love buzzwords. And you're starting to talk about the contract for deed buzzwords. Now, I might be familiar, you might be familiar, but some other people are like, hey, what's an example of this, man? Give us like a concrete example of how this could function.
So I'll give you an example of one of the gals I cold called. It was the situation where, hey, a little bit older, they've been doing it for a while, and they're just kind of tired of all the hassles that come along with the property, but they want the money coming in every month. So
Yeah, like retired, like they want retirement income. That's why they invested in this.
yep.
They want that consistency, right? They don't want to be too much, but they don't want it to be too little, right? Go
Right.
on.
Um, I will throw in, it's a great play for older people who are they have beneficiaries like to their kids, and they'd rather not see all the money get thrown to them in one lump sum, and they'd rather see the payments get stretched out. So like younger
That's
generations in
huge.
their family are set for a longer period of time. But back to real life deal, right? So there was this eightplex in Fargo, and it was talking with the owner and just showed a lot of stress, a lot of signs of stress. They were from out of state, lived in Florida, and they were just having problems. And so all it came down to was, hey, how can I solve problems for you? Like, how can I be of help? You got to be a problem solver. And in those problems, you can find a deal that works for you, but you really got to, focus on what their problems are and trying to fix them. And so, met with the gal in person, and first off, it is 10 times easier communicating to someone in person rather than over the phone. You can really get to learn about them. And basically, yeah, I'm throwing out options to her. So how we would structure it is, here's a couple examples, different options. People love options. And, option A, B, and C, they all have different terms. One is, hey, can I get you the amount of money you were cash flowing prior to when you had your management company? And I pay you a normal price. Maybe I get you more money per month, and at the end, I pay you a smaller price. Basically,
Nice.
the goal of the contract for deed is, excuse me, um, the benefit to the seller is that, hey, you might be able to get them a higher price,
Yep.
5 to 10 years from now. But your advantage is I don't have to go to the bank, and I can get into this property maybe for
Yes.
zero money down,
I can grow
depending on
into
the
this
situation.
property. Yeah, so I mean, I was sitting here. I've got this property. Let's say 600,000 is the price. You'll give in my let's say my cash flow is 30 grand. Okay, that's what I'm getting off this thing. Nice $30,000, $2,500 a month, right? So you're saying to me, I'll give you that 2,500 and your price, and a higher price if I have a low amount down, right? Or let's slide things around. If I give you more monthly, I get it at a lower price and maybe lower percent down. Or you're using these sliders correctly, correct, Mason?
Yeah. And I mean, this is all things you lay out those options, and you see maybe there's a term in each one of those options that fits, the build for this seller. And hey, maybe now we can put all these terms together and make one big great option for the both of us. As long as you put options out there and you work around them. And so yeah, those numbers, right? Like the monthly payment can go up, but the ultimate price can go down, and you can shift them however you want. Like that's the beauty in the creative finance. I mean, it's in the name.
Yes.
You're being creative.
Yep.
How can you create a win-win? And it just comes down to solving each other's problems.
And I love this conversation with a guy like Mason, because Mason's young. He wants to get into his first property. What's an amazing way for Mason to get into his first property? Well, in my mind, it's for him to have low out-of-pocket costs and use time to his advantage to grow into a property. That is what a contract for deed does. And that's an advantage on a buyer side. Like if Mason got into something for less than 5% down, but he had a good 5-7 year run on growing into the property, making payments through the rents coming in, right? So the rents are going to come in, you're going to manage it, but then you're going to make that payment to the seller that you agreed on, grow into that property, principal's going down, the value's going up. But on the sell side, that's the thing. I think sellers sometimes think they need to be wary of this. A Mason would allow the seller to lock in a very attractive end sales price. Let's say the market value of this eightplex is 600. Mason, would you be willing to pay 640 if I gave you a reasonable monthly payment to give me, and you only had to give me $7,500 out of pocket to get into it? So you'd give me $40,000 more than my market price, but over the next 7 years, that's going to slowly chip away. And yeah, it's 7 years from now, is it worth more than 640? Well, yeah, probably, maybe, I don't know, but I'm still locking in my numbers, and surety for me in the later stage of my life, certainty is much of a higher priority for me. So I hope people can see the benefit from a seller side. And, and Mason said, I'm willing to pay more because I get these good terms for me to grow into a good investment if it's the right one. Mason, anything
Yeah.
to add?
And you got to also think about too, like you can structure in like an interest payment, like a regular bank, would charge. But the benefit to them is, hey, they get an interest payment, so they're also making money on top of that end purchase price. But the benefit to me right there is, hey, I can probably get a lower interest rate than I could at the bank. So now you're trying to structure those win-wins for both sides, and
That's
that's
huge.
again, we're just coming back to where, hey, we can both win off of this, you know.
Yeah, no kidding, man. That's such a good point. I can collect my payment from you, but then I can also be making 5 to 6% interest on it, which is a good investment. And that's a win for you because 7% interest is the norm. And the thing that I know we don't have a lot of listeners on that come to the show that are in their 60s, 70s, but we got a lot of listeners that might know people that are in that later stage of life that this could be very applicable for if explained the right way, like Mason has said. And here's the strategy when you're older. You don't want to pay taxes anymore. You've been paying them your whole life. So how can I make money each month, live a good lifestyle, but then pay lower taxes? Well, the biggest tax burden you could have is if you own a building and it's appreciated $200,000 in value and you sell it and you have a huge taxable event. So what Mason's offering is over the next 7 years, I'm going to take that down by $20 to $30,000. I'm going to sell that to you gradually. And so your tax burden is it's decreased a ton when that final sales event comes.
And what happens too when you get someone who's just like, hey, I just want this money coming in every month till I, pass on. And now you can structure something that's, long-term fixed rate debt that maybe you don't even, pay them back you pay it back at the end, but you can just structure that out as far as they want to go. And then you could probably get more favorable terms. There's just so many different ways to do it. So.
Yeah, what a cool topic. I love getting in the weeds on this a little bit. I hope everybody listening followed us okay. And we want questions. We want to have more of these conversations. We want to kind of break down the barriers of things, tools in real estate like contract for deed. Because I feel like once you can add something like this to your tool belt, you can just serve your sphere of influence much better with options rather than the classic, you willing to sell it? I'm willing to buy it. What's our price? You can almost never come across a deal that you can't structure some kind of cool option for a win-win for. And that's the fun of real estate. Mason, real quick for our audience, I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your knowledge, sharing some of the things you're doing. If people are curious, they want to have a conversation with Mason, they want to hear what you're up to. Like I said, Mason's out there making calls. He's kind of like our resident real estate cold caller in our community. That's not coming from a weird, creepy standpoint, coming from a relationship-based connection standpoint, adding value to people. I mean, Mason, you told me a story where you actually met a guy and you went and helped him chip out concrete in a basement or something like that, man. You just helped him out, right?
Yeah, just got on a cold call and said, hey, what property you're working on today, and met with them it was that next week, and we were chipping out tile in the kitchen. And what does that do? They respect that. Like they're willing to, they see you willing to come in there and put in the work, and sometimes you got to get dirty. So,
well, and I mean, and that's you're learning something too. I love your abundant mentality. I think it's contagious. So anyway, back to what I was saying, Mason, how do people get a hold of you, grab coffee, and learn a little bit more about what you're doing and collaborate with you, man?
Yeah, I guess the easiest thing is if you're on the Fargo area, you can probably find me on Facebook, just Mason Peterson. You'll see my face on there. I'm on Instagram and everything, and just let me know if you want to talk. Maybe comment on this video if you want to, and I'll look at the comments. And I'd love to talk with other people who are hungry to get started, because let me tell you, it really is a grind. It's tough, and you just got to stick through it. There's some days where you feel like it's never going to happen, but you just got to keep going and pushing. And sometimes it's good to have another person to hold you accountable. So I'd love to be that guy for anyone else who's in a similar situation. So.
Love it. Mason, thanks for coming on the show. Hopefully, it'd be fun to have you back on after maybe you lock one of these down. That'll be the victory lap show. So,
that'd be a fun story to tell.